You've probably seen it everywhere, right? On social media, in the supplement aisle at the store. Ashwagandha. It's being pitched as the answer to, well, almost everything. But what is it really? And with all this hype, how can you possibly know if it's the right choice for you? You know that feeling, that sense that modern life is just a lot? If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed, you are definitely not alone. And that feeling is exactly why so many of us are looking for something, anything, to help us cope. And that's where ashwagandha really comes into the picture. So in this explainer, we're going to cut through all that noise. We'll start with its ancient history, figure out what this stuff actually is, and then dive into what the science says about the benefits. But most importantly, and I mean this, we're going to hit the essential reality check, the side effects and the warnings you absolutely have to know about. To really get why this herb is so popular today, we've got to look back. I mean, way, way back. Yeah, this is not some new fad that was cooked up in a lab last week. Ashwagandha has been a huge deal in Ayurveda, the traditional Indian system of medicine, for more than 6,000 years. Back then, it was used for everything from pain and inflammation to helping people sleep. The only thing that's new is that modern science is finally starting to catch up and investigate these ancient claims. Okay, so let's get down to it. What exactly are we talking about when we say ashwagandha? All right, so ashwagandha, or Withania somnifera, if you want to use its fancy scientific name, is basically a small shrub that grows in parts of Asia and Africa. You might also hear it called Indian Ginseng or winter cherry. But how it's classified in the wellness world today, well, that all comes down to one really important idea. And that big idea is adaptogen. It sounds a little complex, but the concept is pretty straightforward. It's a type of herb that's believed to help your body, well, adapt. The whole point is that it's supposed to help you manage and respond better to both physical and mental stress, which, let's be honest, is the #1 reason it's gotten so popular. You'll find it in pretty much any form you can imagine. Powders you can put in smoothies, capsules, even tasty little gummies. But here's something that is so important to remember. Because it's a dietary supplement, it's regulated way less strictly than a prescription drug, and because of that, there's no official standard dose. Sure, some studies have seen good results using around 500 to 600 milligrams a day, but this is definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. So, we've covered the ancient wisdom, but what does the modern science actually have to say about all this? Well, when you dig into the most promising human studies, and that's the key word here, human, the research really tends to focus on 3 big areas: stress, sleep, and physical performance.
When it comes to stress and anxiety, the evidence is actually pretty interesting. A few different studies on people have shown that it can lower your levels of cortisol, that infamous stress hormone. And folks in those studies actually reported feeling less anxious and less tired. One study even found it helped curb stress-related food cravings more than a placebo did. Pretty cool, right?
And the potential benefits don't stop there. They seem to carry over into sleep and exercise. A big review of a bunch of studies found it had a small, but still significant positive effect on sleep, which is great news for people dealing with insomnia. And for anyone who hits the gym, other studies suggest it might help with fatigue, improve recovery, and even lead to gains in speed, strength, and muscle. Now, this is where we have to be really careful. You're going to hear some other much bigger claims out there, especially about serious diseases like cancer. But it is so critical to remember what the experts are saying. Yes, there are some lab studies that look promising, but these findings are from tests on cells in a dish or on animals. They have not been proven in humans. And this table does a perfect job of separating the hype from the actual reality. For things like cancer or brain diseases, the research in the lab is fascinating, no doubt, but we have to draw a really hard line here. What happens in a petri dish is not the same thing as what happens inside a human body. The evidence in people, it just isn't there yet. And that brings us to what is, without a doubt, the most important part of this entire conversation. We've talked about the potential good stuff. Now, we absolutely have to have a serious talk about the potential downsides. You have to see it as a balancing act. On one side of the scale, you've got these potential benefits for stress, sleep, and performance. But on the other side, you've got to weigh the side effects, the way it can interact with other medications, and the very real risks it poses for specific groups of people. Okay, so for most people who do get side effects, they're usually pretty mild. We're talking about things like an upset stomach, maybe some drowsiness or a headache. But, and this is a big but, most of the studies only last for a few months. So we really don't have a lot of solid information about what happens when you take it long term. And beyond those milder issues, there are much more serious risks. For some people, this isn't just about a little stomachache. For them, taking ashwagandha could be genuinely dangerous.
And this list right here, it's non-negotiable. Ashwagandha is considered unsafe for anyone who is pregnant since high doses could potentially cause a miscarriage. It should also be avoided if you're breastfeeding, and because it can actually ramp up your immune system, people with autoimmune conditions like lupus or rheumatoid arthritis need to stay away. The same goes for anyone with liver problems, certain types of cancer, or who has surgery coming up.
And finally, we have to talk about how it can interact with other common medications. It can make sedatives even stronger, which can make you dangerously drowsy. It might lower your blood sugar and blood pressure, which is a real problem if you're already on meds for those issues. And it can also mess with thyroid medications and drugs that suppress the immune system. So after all of that, how do you take all this information and use it to make a smart and, more importantly, a safe decision for yourself? It really comes down to a simple 4-step checklist. First, look into the specific benefit you're actually hoping to get. Second, be honest with yourself and review all the potential risks. Third, double-check for any conflicts with other medications you're taking. And fourth, and this is the most critical step of all, you have to talk to your doctor or another qualified healthcare professional.
Look, at the end of the day, the question isn't whether ashwagandha is good or bad. The only question that matters is it right for you? And that is not a decision you should be making based on a video or something you read online. It has to be a real conversation with a medical professional who actually knows you and your health history.
Just to be perfectly clear, this is for educational purposes only. This content is not medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional or a doctor before you start any new supplement, diet, or health regimen. We are not responsible for any actions taken based on this content.